you know. Such a pretty smile, I want to see it once in a while. But you were right for me. You were right for me.
So you ready to rumble?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let's open with a moment of silence, followed by the Serenity Prayer. God,
God,
grant us
the
the
serenity.
serenity to accept the things we cannot change, courage to change the things we can, and wisdom to know the difference. All right. You want to do the reading today?
Okay.
Thanks.
Building a new life. We feel a man is unthinking when he says sobriety is enough. Page 82 in the big book. When I reflect on step 9, I see that physical sobriety must not be enough for me. I need to remember the hopelessness I felt before I found sobriety and how I was willing to go to any lengths for it. Physical sobriety is not enough for those around me. However, since I must see that God's gift is to build a new life for my family, my loved ones, just as importantly, I must be available to help others who want the AA way of life. I ask God to help me share the gift of sobriety so that its benefits may be shown to those who I know and love.
Yeah. Yeah. See, if sobriety were enough, everybody would just quit drinking on their own, and that would be enough. Would be it. But the problem is, there's the multitude of character defects and other stuff that I've got going on, and the core issues that I have, the lack of self-worth and whatever it is that caused me to need to drink in the first place, to try to be something other than myself, all that stuff. That is, what I have to clean up. Because if I don't clean up and get at the core issues within me, then I don't think it's possible for me to stay sober. And even if I did stay sober without changing, I wouldn't be the person that I am today. That wouldn't be the person I was able to become as a result of recovery. So I get that completely.
How much are you changing today?
Well, a little bit. I think I'm changing a little bit. Like I'm more and more and more and more aware of character defects, right? And I realize today that I am still affected by other people's behavior, a little bit by other people's opinions, and I have a hard time sometimes. I have a hard time letting stuff go and realizing that I don't have control over some things, but yet still having a problem with it. So I mean, that's a constant thing for me to work on that. Acceptance of other people as being exactly where they are, what they're supposed to be, and yeah. So that's what I'd like to. I'd like to become really unaffected by other people's behavior, completely unaffected by other people's behavior, that'd be great. But that's probably something I'm never going to be, never going to be at. And I have another part of it is being okay with where I'm at in terms of my growth and my spirituality, my life. You know, being okay with where I'm at is another part of it. You know, because I still get sometimes I'll do something and go, what the hell? What did I do that for?
Uh-huh.
You know, and why did I let that affect me, or you know, things like that. And I guess I'd like to also believe that, you know, I am flawed. I am going to have those times when I make mistakes and beat myself up a little bit, but try to you know, do as little self-harm as I can and have more as much acceptance of other people and their stuff as I can.
So I heard this guy speak one time, and you wouldn't know he was sober, but it turned out that he was.
Yeah.
And he says that, I don't think he definitely didn't say should, but kind of how I personally took it is you should. And he indicated that it's important to him to reinvent himself at least every 10 years.
Okay.
And I took that to heart because I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. I don't like carrying this, like I like shedding my skin, and
oh, I like that. Yeah, it's good.
And that's just like my big kind of work through, and my big kind of personal growth is being shedding a lot of skin that especially in the last 4 or 5 years, and living abroad and building a base here, and just kind of like just reinventing myself in a world that I'm not used to at all. And usually I go, like I used to say, like I'm a 5-year block man. Like every 5 years I want a new personality. I want a new character. I want to try things on. And you'll have a base, perhaps that never changes, but I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. And I used to always sign in people's big book, keep changing. Because I think, like, again, like AA is a really great platform, and there's some basics and some foundation that in theory probably better it stays with you a lifetime, but there's a lot of things in there that can fall by the wayside, and it's okay. And it's like moving along and seeing things from a different perspective. And then being somebody with a problem with addiction or obsessive compulsive disorder, I can't really reinvent myself if I'm using drugs and alcohol. So
right.
For me, so that kind of goes not without saying, but that's okay. So we got that down for today. And now how can I reinvent myself and like make it's almost like, even with the chapter or this reading was called Building a New Life. Like I think you should build a new life, like again and again and again. And I think that method and that kind of philosophy would combat mediocrity and a stale
complacency
and stale existence. Like I think one of my big kind of factors is, like, if life isn't exciting and challenging and goal orientated in sobriety, then going back is really an option, because it just the payouts aren't worth it. So I think like that's where I've tried to hammer that point home, like probably every week. And I just see that it's not everything, and it's not going to necessarily, it's not the only ingredients that you need, but I just think it doesn't, I don't hear enough about that.
So how do, sorry. Yeah.
So I guess what I would like to know, definitely what you were going to say, but also what do you think about the concept of reinventing yourself?
Okay, so if you're gonna what does that look like? So for you talking about reinventing yourself every 5-10 years, what's the process for doing that?
Like oversimplifying it, I would say by going in a new direction completely, like throwing in the towel, or it would definitely revolve around trying new, not just new things, but like taking on a new life that you weren't expecting, or that like is very different from your current status and your current state. Because I really think, because then I think in theory you would combine them for a very healthy, interesting life by having all these different experiences and these different, in a weird way, like masks that you wear so that you can just experience life to the fullest. And maybe mask is not the best analogy, but these different stories that you would take on. And so I think I don't think it's about baby steps either. Like, I think it would be like transforming your life and then experiencing that, and then trying to make it work. Like try something completely new, and making it work is really important, versus just making one thing work for 30 years. I don't think is as valuable as trying on new experiences and new pathways and new directions. I think is so, it kind of goes on.
So what if you're going along though, and you like your life the way it is, and because are you talking like maybe a career change, a relationship change, or like like reinventing yourself? Like what you're talking about, some big changes, or what if you're like, if I prefer to have more of a gradual change, and just to say that I like my life in a lot of different ways, but I'm going to try this. Like I'm going to try I'm going to try to spend way more time working with others, or I'm going to spend more time pursuing a specific goal, and that's kind of like reinventing myself, but without completely rocking my world, right?
I think you should rock your world.
So just for the hell of it, like become like a monk, or just for the hell of it,
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
But I'm kind of not joking. Like I think there's limits, and there's excuses, and there would be also like, you don't want to necessarily do it without thinking things through. But I just feel
right. Well, I kind of that sounds like an interesting concept, and what the part of it I like, it would maybe something along the lines of like, there's something that I've sort of always wanted to try, but I haven't. There's I remember I don't know how many years ago, I'm going to say 15 years ago or whatever it was, when I decided I always wanted to play guitar, so I was going to learn to play guitar.
right.
And I started learning to play guitar.
Right.
And and I learned to play guitar. It was fun. So something like that, that was good. I mean, I like that concept of, you know, doing something like that, or
But so like I
I
think
always wanted to try judo or something like that, or I always wanted to try painting, or
so like that's what
whatever.
I mean. So like now go like all in, all like scrap everything. Like let's say you want to try surfing, and
Yeah,
you
yeah.
start surfing in Lake Ontario, and then you move your whole operation to the Bahamas, and you start a surfing company. Like if you start playing guitar, then you join a band, and then you go on the road. Like, do you see how it completely like flips the table?
Right.
And I think like that's important. And I'm not saying you would do it without, like, maybe the first couple times that you do these kinds of things, it does, like, you can learn from that, so it doesn't become necessarily as, it can be as dramatic, but it's not done in a way that it counteracts against what you previously built. So
Right.
but I do
That's what that's what I was saying. That's what I like. I like that idea.
I know, but like imagine you played guitar, you join a band, and you guys tour across Canada for 5 months, and like that story though, and like that like you see what it would do to your current life, and I think like those are musts. And then when I listen to this guy saying like you should do that kind of thing, like imagine you go, like if someone goes, oh yeah, Joe Tilley, the sportscaster, and you go, actually no, it's Joe Tilley, the band member in this band, and like, and even like, okay, now that I'm unraveling, I remember David Lee Roth from the band
Van Halen.
That's right. He just fell off the grid and became a paramedic for like 2 or 3 years.
No kidding.
Swear to God.
Wow.
Like a legit paramedic, where he would pick up people and they're like, hey, aren't you? And then they would like pass out. Like, not because it was David Lee Roth, but because they were probably in pain or something, or like having a big problem. And he would like go into people's houses, like, and so like when you hear about these people doing that kind of thing, like he was reinventing himself. I didn't even have that example. I just remember hearing him talk about it.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. I never knew that. That's great.
Right. And so I think like that kind of, I really believe that is just as important to your sobriety than anything else you can mention. And that kind of philosophy and that kind of life building is going to go, yeah, this is great because I'm doing this, this, and this. And so I like sobriety and I want to continue this way of life. And I want to experience life in this form. It's benefiting me in so many different ways, and I'm enjoying it. Like, I'm not just saying I'm enjoying it. I'm not just comparing it to being a blackout drunk who was a piece of shit. I'm not comparing it. It's just a great way of life, period. And in order to maintain it, then you would equate that, well, I'm not going to change my sobriety because I'm not willing to give up this style of living and the benefits to this way of living. I think it becomes really apparent and really like anybody can do the math. The problem is that I have is this whole conversation comes like, I said, are you changing now? Like, yes, you made some major changes 20 years ago and 26 years ago, but like, what are you changing now? And what are you doing now in order to make your life spectacular? And that's not like specifically, I used your dates, but that's not really directed at you per se, but that's the questions I ask myself for sure. Like what skin, like what directions can you take on and how can you reinvent yourself? Because I think that's perhaps one of the things that helps when you would ask the question, like, what's the meaning of life? Like that's in that realm.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's just that concept of this idea of trying something new and you know, reinventing yourself to a degree. I mean, like I said, I don't know what the difference is. Maybe sometimes between complacency and staleness, or maybe there is no difference. I don't know. And I think staleness can be probably a problem in sobriety. You know, if things get too stale, like, cause you know, like you often say, is like, you know, life has got to be better than life is sober's got to be better than life not sober,
Right.
to a significant degree. Otherwise, the pursuit of sobriety won't be so important, powerful.
Right. Like, can I jump in, or are you gonna?
Yeah. It's good.
So we disagree on this really hard, and I don't want to say that you're being untruthful. I think it's just a perspective, and I feel like I'm being really honest by saying it, but I'm not. That doesn't mean that I'm saying you're dishonest. Okay.
Okay.
I watched a movie last night. Don't ask me why. It wasn't planned, and it wasn't. It's not. I don't. There are some inspiring elements to it, and there's a lot of sadness to it, but it's something to look at. And it doesn't matter. I like, if I'm imagining what you're going to say is like, well, it doesn't matter what people think. But I'm just looking at it from a society-based kind of like, and 40 years down the road. This is 40 years later. And I watched a movie called Sid and Nancy.
Okay,
and
don't know it.
Sid and Nancy is Sid Vicious from the Sex Pistols.
Oh yeah, okay.
And their heroin, drug-infested life that ended his life at 21. He was 21. Wow. Crazy, right? 21.
Yeah.
Now, there's a million things to rip apart and go like, why would you want to live like that? And there's probably 1,000 things that you could point out was like he was a true rock star and a true, however you want to like
rebel.
Yeah, rebel and stuff like that. And I just, so where I would imagine, like, there is, not positive is the wrong word, but he definitely had a very interesting story, even at his death. 40 years later, they're still making documentaries. That's how I got spun in, because I saw something about like 40 years later, he died in 79.
Okay, yeah.
And they're still talking about this kid who he had like half a brain, rotten teeth, and it was a heroin junkie, and had like just let himself go so much that people were gravitating to him because he just didn't have a care in the world. And it at the time, society really like gravitated, not everyone, the parents all hated him and thought he was the devil, and the kids all couldn't wait to, be in his presence, as if he was like the Beatles for a year. Like, Pistols was not obviously the Beatles, but they did.
Well, they were big for about a year.
Right. And so there was so there's a lot of things. And so my point is, if your life, it doesn't have to be as careless and absurd and obscene as the Sex Pistols and sobriety, but if you're not on the track where it's like going to outweigh an interesting, like, wild life, because that's what you like, that's what you're anticipating when you're having a drink, and you're anticipating fun and excitement and a way to pass the time, and then you combine that with addiction, so it's just a kind of a weird cycle, and then you have like these, you have more in theory, if you come into the program, you're going to have more shitty times that outweigh the good times. And then
Right.
in a lot of cases, that's going to be like a couple of decades of pain and suffering.
Yeah, but it's kind of a weird dichotomy because you're anticipating, in a sense, like I'd be anticipating some relief from my shitty thinking, my shitty place in life, but at the same time, understanding that it's probably not going to work. I'm not going to get the relief that I was looking for.
Well, not only relief, but like the life that you were hoping for.
Yeah, like that's all. I mean, I think it's like, I would have liked to be transported suddenly to and the book talks about that, like suddenly transported into a place of a place where people honor me and admire me, and I'm great, and I'm doing great things, and I just want to be somehow transported into that place, but everything I'm doing is tearing me up and making me into a fool and ridiculing myself and so it's anyway, that's the reality, and the alcoholic addict death is not fun. It's not a fun thing, and it's to see a guy like Sid Vicious and his demise in 21, it was I think a perfect storm for him to be that person at that time,
right?
And you look at other people, like there's like hundreds probably of people that had incredible talent, but what was ruined and wasted by their disease, like Amy Winehouse and Jimi Hendrix and Jim Morrison and on and on. So like Janet,
go ahead.
whatever. Yeah. Anyway, like all those people, their life was cut short. Was it the addictive? But then you got a lot of people who a lot of people who got clean, right? A lot of people who've gone through that and come through the other side and got clean, and did change the world with their music, or change the world with their art, whatever, and change their music, change the world through that form, and then got clean, right? Or and somebody like yourself who got clean and then found themselves in an art form, right? So there's lots of and though you have almost I wouldn't say unique, but not a common. I mean, it's not uncommon for people to get sober and clean and change their lives and have a really great life. That's we see that examples of that all the time. And people do invent themselves, right? People get clean and sober, and they open up their own companies, or they become professionals, or right? There's a lot of different, or become counselors, and become there's lots of different ways that people can have useful lives, right? Or become a paramedic for whatever. There's lots of different things, lots of different ways that people could change their lives and become who they wanted to be, and sobriety's given them that opportunity to reinvent themselves.
So now I'll get into what I think that we may disagree on at a core level in some ways. And it's the fact that I believe that there's pros and cons to sobriety, and there's pros and cons to active addiction. It's not all one-sided.
Okay.
And I think that that's something I don't. I'll just say what I was going to say. I think that might be hard to digest, but that's what I believe to be true, and I don't see it all as black and white. And I don't really want a life like Sid Vicious, but there's a reason why his legacy continues, and it's not even about the talent. Like, he was talentless in a sense. Like, he couldn't play the guitar for the life of him, and he was just like a symbol of rebellion and what people wish they could do but didn't have the balls.
Yeah.
Including using heroin, including using, like, living that life where you're like, yeah, but I'm not going to do that. I guess I'm going to go to my job and do this and this and stick with my responsibilities. Which in theory you go, well, that's the moral thing to do, and that's the responsible thing to do. But guess what? No one's talking about you fucking 40 years later either.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's this combination of, like, just being honest. I take it as, like, do you think it's better to have a legacy that lives on forever and die at 21, or live a mediocre life till you're 80 and just fucking fuel the earth with dirt? Like, I think it's important to, like, look at all elements, and if you make a decision to live a sober life, well, then I think I take on the onus of going, okay, so how do you live a sober life and live it in a spectacular fashion, or in a way that's not mediocre, at least not mediocre. Because if you're living a drug fueled life, it's not mediocre either. It might be desperate and it might be sad and heinous, but it's not mediocre in many ways. And so, like, there's a lot of, like, there's just different angles, and there are mediocre fucking drug addicts too that just, like, fade away into the basement of hell and, like, don't come out. Yeah, like, and that's why it's kind
of, like, remember that's probably most, right? Like, that's probably most. Like, the examples of, the ones we talked about, the the Sid Viciouses and, the Jimi Hendrixes or whatever, those are few and far between. People who had tremendous success and were drug addicts.
Well, no, because I think the majority of good speakers have the same platform. And so, like, they always have these biker tales of fucking horror and these exciting, extreme lifestyles. And then they do a 180 and they get reformed and they find the program and they change their lives.
Yeah, but the exciting, extreme lifestyles, which that's what we all start out with. I mean, I love the excitement, right? I love the excitement. It was fun, in the beginning. But at some point, it turns against me, and that's and the fun's gone, right? That's the thing. And now the disease has me. I don't have the disease anymore. I can't control anything anymore, and the fun's all gone. I'm not having fun anymore. There's nothing fun about having to drink every day, and pushing people away and not being connected to anybody in any way at all, really. Only looking up for myself and my selfish and centered needs and my addiction, and not only taking care of my addiction and my self-centered needs and not really giving two shits about anybody else. That's what happens, right? So that's the reality, whereas you see a guy like Sid Vicious or Jimi Hendrix, who is, like, entertaining people until his last day, right? That's bloody almost fiction, because it's so few. Cases like that are so far and few between. Like, that's what I think, if once we start going down that slide, there's part of me that would like to be able to do that, to be that guy who, like, would be remembered as a great guy who succumbed to alcohol. But great guy, just succumbed to alcohol, and just be known as that. but that's not, to me, that's not, no, because that suffering that I experience in that addiction is not worth anything. It's got no value. It's like, I mean, like I said, like the Sid Vicious that's a pipe dream. That's just not going to happen. I'm not going to be a famous musician that everybody remembers so fondly, and because I was such a crazy rebel. I mean, that's one. There's one guy. We got one good example of that. And then we got the guys like, the Jimi Hendrixes and the Janis Joplins who had tremendous talent and ability, but could not stop, and their disease carried them to the end. And then the millions and millions more who just ended up in some basement somewhere, or some motel room somewhere, or the street somewhere, and died an alcoholic or addictive death in a shitty way. And that's feeling shitty, being shitty, not having anything to live for, and just dying. There's nothing glamorous about that. There's nothing, to be envied. There's nothing there. That's just the truth. That's the reality.
So we talk with ease about the disease turning on you and that lifestyle not paying off. I will put up my hand with the rest of us, and I'm also just indicating that I believe that goes that's the same. That goes for sobriety as well. It can turn on you. It's just because, like, if you want to be an amazing guitar player and you get sober, you might have better chances of that, but that doesn't guarantee anything. It doesn't guarantee anything. And it's kind of like, so you have to, I think that sobriety can become stale. And
well, yeah, but I think sobriety gives me a chance to do whatever I want, and if I don't have to do anything spectacular. Like, I could just have just a job and do my thing and go about my daily routine and just live an honest, unselfish life, and like learn to live that way, which I've never lived before because I've always been locked in my disease and my selfishness and self-centeredness. So now I can have a life where I'm not like that anymore and feel really just good about that, living that life, and maybe like working at my 40-hour job. Well, maybe it doesn't come to an end.
I say it does.
Do the deal. Well, no, I don't think it does. And I think if I can just do that, I can continue to do that. I can continue to. I think there's three aspects of recovery that I think I have to do. I have to trust God, any power, whatever it does, whatever power you choose. I have to trust God, clean house, and help others. If I trust God, clean house, help others, I think I've got a good shot at a good life. And if I do those things and continue to do those things, I can have a good life for extended periods of time, right? And if I allow it to get stale, maybe it's because I'm not doing one of those things or two of those things, right? Maybe I'm not cleaning house anymore. Maybe I'm not helping others anymore. Maybe I'm not trusting God anymore. Maybe I'm allowing my ego to take over. So therefore, my ego is making my life feel like I'm stale, like it's stale, like it has no meaning. Maybe that's what the problem is.
Or maybe your life is stale.
Or maybe my life is stale. But you know what? I don't think so. I think if I continue to, trust God, help others, clean house, help others. If I continue to do that, I don't think it'll get stale. I mean, put it this way: there's nothing stale about looking across from a newcomer whose eyes are opening up for the first time, and they're saying, "Holy shit, I get it!" It's me. I mean, that's pretty. To me, that's exciting stuff. And to me, that's just as exciting as any accomplishment that I might have personally. That's pretty cool stuff. Right? That's what I look at. And I think that's why I I continue to go back there because I think that's where the joy comes from. And I think what happens is complacency and staleness it happens in the program in recovery. And I think people allow themselves to get away from the program where they're not helping others, where they're not cleaning house, where they're not trusting God. And yeah, I could still see how that could lead to complacency and staleness and boredom and all that other stuff, which is to me is a good formula for drinking. If I feel like my life is boring, I'm going to want to drink. But if I'm helping others on a regular basis, I don't find there's really no time for boredom, and I'm enjoying it. It's like that's when the book talks about getting rocketed into the fourth dimension of existence. It's because we're able to carry the message. And when we've stopped carrying the message, boredom, complacency, So if I look for today, like when I do the 11-step prayer every morning, God direct my thinking, ask my thinking be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, or self-seeking motives. I ask for inspiration, an intuitive thought or decision. What is my next step to be? Free me from self-will. What can I do for others? So I think about all that stuff, and then so I get intuitive thoughts, right? I get intuitive thoughts. All of a sudden I get an idea. I'm going to call so-and-so, and I call them. Or send them a text or whatever. And I get to intuitive thoughts, and I got to ask this guy if he wants me to, take him through the book. And I'll do that. And then I'll start doing that. And those are intuitive thoughts. Those are directions that I get because I'm asking for it. And I believe if I do that and ask for it and get it, there's no room for boredom or complacency there. I mean, I like the idea that if I've been stifling myself by not pursuing personal goals that might be important to me, that might be allow me to get out of myself a little bit and to cut through some of my fears, I think that's spiritual growth, and I think that's part of cleaning house. So I think that's a good, valuable thing that I can do is to cut through those fears and try something new. That's great. But I think if I'm suffering from boredom or staleness or complacency, it might be because I'm not trusting God, cleaning house, or helping others.
So I guess like what's going through my mind is you're also not describing a legacy similar to Sid Vicious.
No.
Right.
No, because he never knew that stuff. He never had a chance because the disease gone before he could even. I mean, who knows what was going through his head? But I'm going to assume that he was not a happy person. Okay, I'm going to make that. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say he was not a happy person to live the kind of life he was living. Right.
But I'm looking at like, it's just like, I think it's important to want more, like cleaning house and helping others is great. And what? And I'm not even imagining I'm on the same legacy as a person like Sid Vicious or Bill W. for that matter, or like, but if there's not the option of that, or the it's actually humbling to talk about, but I'm a little fearful. Like, I just feel like it's not about rich or famous, but there's something about legacy and power and impacting society and as well. And yes, you can do that through a ripple effect, but and often it's right in front of you. And there are some things that I can like that I'm debating with myself, even speaking out loud. But I'm afraid of mediocrity. I'm afraid of like complacency, as you mentioned, and I'm always really interested in different perspectives and ways to transport myself out of those realms, because I just don't feel like the payoff is there, and I don't feel like it's the moment I feel like I'm being mediocre or just wasting time or just not having an impact. It affects me rather profoundly. And so I feel like that I have to combat that in order for me to stay sober, for me to have even a chance at impacting or having like a meaningful, interesting life.
Yeah. So maybe a good challenge for you would be try to live a boring life for a couple of days, just to try it on.
I've done
Just
that.
to say, okay. There, and you purposely said, I'm going to live a boring life for this day. I'm just going to do a routine that's going to lead to no excitement or anything like that. I'm just going to have a really, you know what? As a matter of fact, today, I'm just going to go see if I can help somebody else today, and get out of myself completely, and just to see what I can do for somebody else today.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm just throwing that out there because if I think about it, I don't know if I've ever had it where I just said, okay, today I'm just going to see what I can do for somebody else today and just forget about myself completely.
Right.
And just to try to live a boring existence today, just to see what I can do to help. I don't think I've ever actually consciously said that to myself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think I've gone out and started helping other people, and it's turned into like a nonstop help other people day. I think I've had a few of those, but I don't think I've consciously made a decision that's what I was going to do.
And then just the last thing that I would throw out there is that the following day is like, okay, how do I take whatever I'm doing, in my case, it would be my art and my life. I'm going to clear my day, and how can I get my life on track so I'm attaining the goals that I would like to accomplish. And I think that's just as important as helping somebody else as well. It's like, so I'm not accomplishing these goals. Why? Maybe I need to talk to a mentor. Maybe I need to go to a different class. Maybe I need to network. Maybe I need to do some advertisement. Maybe I need, like, all those things are equally critical to helping somebody else. Because if I'm not gaining momentum and I'm not seeing the trajectory that I want, or that I'm on the road that I want to be on, that can be just as much of a detriment as anything else to my sobriety.
Yeah. And but you know what though, is I think that what I've experienced is that when I help others and I work on cleaning house, helping others, trusting God, when I work on those things, I find that my life tends to unfold in a very comfortable, happy fashion.
I don't want comfortable.
Yeah, I know. Do you want Sid Vicious uncomfortable?
Somewhere in the middle would be nice.
Yeah. Okay.
Because but it can go the other way. Like, it doesn't have to be like, it could be between comfortable and Oprah. Like, it doesn't, right. I'm just saying, like, I remember I used to have a huge resentment against the word contented sobriety. That does not sound attractive at all. And yeah. Even today, like, yes, if you take the worst day of your drinking and compare it to your worst day of your sobriety, often you're going to choose the worst day of sobriety. Not always, but often. And, but like, I just like, that was never my aim. I didn't want that out of sobriety. I didn't want that out of life, let alone sobriety. I didn't want contentment and comfort. Like, that's not a goal at all. And I get it if you're 80 and had a fucking whirlwind of terror and horror and you just want to garden. Okay, I get it. But as a 36-year-old with 20 years or 19 years of sobriety, like, contentment and comfort is not on my agenda.
Yeah.
At all. And the moment it gets in that stale, like, frequency, it's like, no thanks.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's just where you're at right now, and I get that, and that's okay, and that's, who cares? It's good. Your values and your outlook are what's important to you, and that's what matters to you. So I mean, you have to find yourself, and then, like you say, reinvent yourself and do all that stuff. And then my experience tells me that I like to have other things. I like to do other things, and I stretch myself in a lot of different ways. But I also understand that I get a lot out of just. I get a lot out of getting out of myself and looking to help others. That's what I find. So I think that's an important part for me.
Yeah, that's critical and it's valuable. I just, our paths are in different stages, I guess, or there's
yeah, and it's all good.
Yeah.
All right, I gotta run. You ready to do the serenity prayer?
Yep.
Okay. God,
God,
grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, courage to change the things we can, and wisdom to know the difference. All right, man. I love you. Have a great day.
Yeah, have fun golfing, Pop.
Yeah, thanks. Okay.
Okay, bye.
Such a